So hello, everyone. My name is Alexandra Monsi. I'm a senior strategist at Co-Founders. I have been part of Co-Founders for the last 3.5 years, and actually very soon after I joined Co-Founders, we established this club of daring leaders that's called Artful Leaders Club. And part of this network, we have about 700 people in this network today. We are organizing these events called Artful Leaders in Times of Transition. So this is our 9th edition online, and we've had a couple of sessions live as well. So with us today, we have Alastair, Harri, and Elisa, and I will introduce them in just a moment. So welcome to this session. We're very excited to have you here. Just to note that we as co-founders, we work with branding and company culture, and we see them as two sides of the same coin. And we believe that values, that is also our main topic today, values sit at the intersection of brand and culture, because they are one really big part of keeping both sides together. How we behave and how we act with people inside the organization, with our employees, shines through in the way we behave with our clients, with our partners, and our role in society overall as companies. So before stepping into the event agenda, I also want to say that Alastair has been a partner in crime, so to say, for many projects and many events. So we're happy to have him again here, and he's a member of our board at Co-Founders as well. We have been working together on company culture development. So we'll introduce everybody in a second. This is how the agenda looks like. I think that Kati raised a hand. Let me see. Kati, do you want to see something or say something? Let's see. I will check if there's something on the chat. No, I'm not seeing anything. Okay, well, Kati, let me know if you want to say something at some point. Okay, so going back to the agenda, this is how it looks like. We're introducing the session, and then we'll have a short chat with Alastair about values. Then we'll step into the workshop where Alastair, Elisa, and Harri will talk about their own personal values in connection with the company values and what kind of behaviors and actions spring up from those values. And we would love to also hear from you during the session. So we invite you to also reflect on your own values, and gather any questions that you might have, any thoughts, and really share it with us in the chat box. So we'll come back to those at the end of the session. So without further ado, our guest today, Alastair Creamer, whom I mentioned already. He's been working with cultural transformation and culture development for a very long time, and he's based in the UK, in London, and he's a partner director at Creamer and Milliken. Welcome, Alastair.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like me to say a few words at this point? Is this how we do it?
It's a good point. Yes, please do if you want to.
Okay, so very quickly as an introduction, I am a musician by education. My whole school and university life was about classical music, and then age 21 it all changed, and I put that away, and I investigated and explored lots of different areas, moving into arts organizations, business, and higher education. And those three worlds of creativity, business, and learning came together when I joined Unilever, and ran a 6-7 year cultural change project for Unilever in the UK. And that set me on my way towards exploring, investigating, and now really trying to help other organizations accelerate their cultural change. And values is something that runs through every aspect, like a golden thread through everything that we offer. So I'm thrilled to be here today.
Thank you, Alastair. Happy to have you on board again. Elisa Markula, she's the CEO of VR. She has spent a lot of years in leadership positions, CEO positions, and she's also been in charge of several values renewal processes in different companies. So we're very happy to have her here today, and we really felt like it's so easy to talk to Elisa about culture and culture development and values, because it feels like it's something that's very close to her heart, and she really sees the importance of values and culture in the companies she's working in. So welcome, Elisa.
Thank you.
And Harri Savolainen is the CEO of Fondia, whom we see as a very different kind of law firm, very entrepreneurial spirit, and Harri has had a long career in CFO roles in different companies, global companies, and he's joined Fondia in 2019, and since then he became the CEO. So Harri also participated in our company culture report interview process that we released a month ago, and we have been talking a lot about culture and culture development and how it really stands as a foundation of any company and any business. So really welcome, Harri. Really happy to have you on board.
Thank you. It's pleasant to be here with you guys.
Excellent. So we're kind of set up, so to say. Welcome to write questions in the chat box. In the meantime, I found out that Kati was testing the features, so not yet any questions, but happy to receive those during the time of the event. So let's step into what are values, because they're also very abstract things. So Alastair, let's open this up a little bit. What do we understand when we say values?
Well, my interpretation, and I'm very happy to open this up to the floor immediately, but I think values are based around universal truths. And when we talk about that, we mean things like courage, loyalty, service, equality, freedom, trust, community, etc. There's a really wonderful list, if you ever want to dig into this, in Brené Brown's Dare to Lead. It's a wonderful book. And in there, she lists, I'd say, probably about 100, 120 words, single words that she goes, these are what I think of as not comprehensive, but the list of values. So this is kind of what we're talking about. Now, I would say that what these do is they're like principles of standards of behavior which we aspire to. And I think that's important. It's not just the ones that we're living, but we want to live them better. They're our way of being. They're, for some people, a sort of mental map, a code for how we live. They anchor us. And I think they also steer and they guide us. So they're really important. All great leaders lead through their values. I think that is, without exception. And they are the things that we judge to be most important to us, because they frame absolutely everything that we do, from our thoughts, our actions, decisions, behavior. And we obviously were brought up with a set of values by those who brought us up, our families, our parents, whomsoever. And over time, they begin to develop. We get that independence from that childhood, and we begin to create our own values. And I think over time, values take time. to appear in our lives, to embed themselves, which also means they often take time to disappear and fall off as something new comes through. So I could imagine that many of us have values, let's say, around environmental responsibility, climate change, those kinds of areas, sustainable living, which maybe our parents or grandparents didn't feel so strongly about. That sort of value or set of values will have crept up on us through school, through our friends, and then established themselves in our teenage years or our 20s as something really important. I do think we just have one set of values. We don't have a professional set and a personal set. And that it's really quite a small list. I think Brené Brown often talks about 2, 3 to 5, it's tight. It's a very tight thing. And the final thing I'd say, Alex, is that values tend to unite people. We can share the same set of values, and we're drawn to people with those same values. That's often how we choose our partners in life or our key colleagues at work. And in moments of high drama and crisis, often that's when our values show themselves most clearly. You might have just lost your job. You could be in the middle of the terrible circumstances happening in Israel and Gaza at the moment. This is often when our values are shown in stark kind of relief, and you can see them most clearly. Yeah. So, of course, they define us to ourselves, but as importantly, they define us to other people. Other people can pick up what our values are, because they are what we stand for, what we care about, what matters to us. And someone beautifully said, they're the kinds of things we do when no one is looking. So it's not as if we just put them on show as and when we're in company. They just are our identity.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that they drive our behavior and our actions even when we don't realize it. Yes. So I actually found this process of discovering one's values very interesting, because we kind of assume that we know our values, but when we actually pause to reflect on them, it's pretty hard to pinpoint them. I don't know if Harri and Elisa, you had the same feeling when you for the first time kind of reflected on your own values, because you sort of sense that you know them, they're so powerful somehow, but you don't really articulate them. And I'm happy that you mentioned the list of Brené Brown, because I actually used that list to map out my own values. So it was an interesting process, because yeah, you can identify with almost 80 out of 100 at the end of the day. But then how do you sort of pinpoint those that really, really feel like you? And I also want to take this further a little bit towards beliefs and how values differentiate them beliefs. And I think you at some point said something very interesting, that values bring us together while beliefs can actually create divides between us. And they are also very different in terms of depth. Values are much more deep, while beliefs and kind of attitudes are much more flexible and at a more superficial level, and they can change much more easily while our values stay the same. Would you like to comment a little bit on that too?
Yes, very quickly. And then I want to come back to your great question, Alex, to Elisa and Harri, about when they first discovered, gosh, okay, that's a value. So, but quickly, a few words about beliefs. I think beliefs begin as assumptions, and opinions about the world. And that's because they are contextual. They arise from situations we face, along with our learned experiences. And I think beliefs tend to come and go much more quickly. Whereas values, as I said earlier, tend to they have a slower burn, arriving and establishing themselves and then going. They are just who we are. It's not to say that we don't change our values through our life. I think we do. As we go through different ages, different circumstances, they do change. But I think for today's purposes, if we could just try and see if we can focus around this idea of values as opposed to beliefs, because I think there are differences. I'm sure there'll be some chat about that. But Elisa and Harri, could I ask you both, and Elisa first, this lovely question from Alex. When did you first really understand a particular value, or that you had values, or that values were important to you?
Thank you for a great pre-discussion related to this topic. I have to say that I fully agree with you, Alastair, and I'm worried, but because in a good webinar we should create a small conflict that we disagree, and then we somehow come to a conclusion. But that was only a side note. I related to that, I think the older you get, the stronger your values are, because I have been in the business over 30 years, and I think the very first values came out, especially when you were in your first job, and the world was very different in 90s when I started. So then with the confrontation, what is right and what is wrong, as a young employee, I found out that these are my values. These are something that you resigned from your job. Do you know what I mean? It's very strong, of course, statement when you do these things. But this was my experience. Harri, how do you see? What was your experience when you first found out that you find your values?
Thank you, Elisa, to handing over. For me, as a young boy, I have a strong background in sports. I'm a team player, played ice hockey, football, and so forth. And I always wondered why I was a part of the team of captains. I wasn't the best one. And then later years, maybe in Finland, as men has to go to military. And then I kind of realized that it wasn't because I was a good player, even though I think or thought that I was a good player, but it was because I was standing always aside with my values, and I was kind of taking care of that we as a team are kind of functioning on doing an outstanding performance and having a bit of a daring, caring attitude towards the game itself and for the people itself. So maybe at the very young age, even though I didn't understand at the time, but maybe one good point what Alastair mentioned, it is something that you need a first bit of an identity. Who are you in order to bit of build upon that, to build the values, how you kind of act in a later stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, in shortly.
Really, really interesting point. So Elisa, totally understand those sort of situations where it's a choice, right, that you're making, and you know that there's something that's kind of conflicting. So then it's the moment when you realize, like Alastair also mentioned, the crisis situation when your values really kick in and that push you in a direction that's according to them. And Harri, I think that's so interesting that we reflect on us as children or really, really young adults and realize later on that the roles that we had and the things that we did were actually connected with our values, but we didn't really realize it at that time. So it kind of makes everything come together, right? It's a story. And
yes.
And actually, Alastair, you wanted to sort of bring in this idea of a story, part of this conversation, because there are different ways to arrive at your values. So let's talk about these 3 questions that also Brené Brown actually maps on how to arrive at your values, and sort of jumping into this before we go into the workshop. So Alastair and Harri and Elisa can open up more about their own values and the company values, how they're interrelated. I would invite everyone online to also map out their values or reflect on them if you haven't already. So, and if you have and you wish to share them with us, please do so, and write them in the chat, and any kind of thoughts or comments that you'd like to make. So Alastair, how would you open up these 3 questions?
So just to build on your point there, Alex, do please, it's so interesting to hear other people's values, the words you use, the words you describe, what it is that's important to you, what you stand for, what you care about. So if you feel happy to, and I do think values are things that, it's a good little test actually, that you should be happy to share with everyone and anyone. You want your values to be known. Anyway, on to these. So again, Brené Brown getting a lot of credit today. This comes from her book, and I just think they are the simplest, beautiful way of delving into this thing. And excuse me, there are 2 thoughts I have here. If you're thinking about your values for the first time, you just haven't articulated them, and you're sitting here going, I don't know. These are 3 fabulous questions, a really great start. I'm going to give you a few more in a minute. But they are also good for those of us who are wondering whether something you think of as a value is really a value, because you need to test them. And sometimes a value might just be a strongly held belief or something that you would like to think that other people see in you. I've often thought that loyalty is a very, very strong value for me, and it is. It's just not quite as strong as some of the others. And I've felt this, particularly when asking myself these questions. So the other thoughts we have for you are these. There's a lovely exercise where you look at who are your heroes and why. Who are the people that have inspired you, shaped your world, influenced you, and why? Often these people are family members, or they might be teachers, college professors, team coaches, bosses, etc. Because what it tells you is that these are the people you're drawn to. And these are the people that have inspired you for a certain reason, because they stood for equality and freedom or liberty or whatever it is. And often you will be sharing the same values, or this phrase again, aspire to share the values as your heroes, people who know you or you know them well. So that's thought number 1. Thought number 2 is, what do you spend your time doing willingly? And your energy. Now, work is obviously one, but outside work, are you part of the community? Are you part of a choir? Are you part of some team? What gets you angry and therefore gets you engaged in something? What brings you great joy? What gets you deeply frustrated? What would you campaign for or against on a rainy Sunday morning? These sorts of questions are quite good to dig out, you know, and unearth those things that are important to you, that matter to you. You know, in this country, my father was a doctor all his life in the National Health System, and the National Health Service. If that was ever under deepest threat, I would be out there campaigning on the front line with my placards. It's very, very important to me. And the final thing, which relates to the question that Alex just raised, and the final part of that slide, is the stories we tell ourselves and that we tell about ourselves. This is often, these might be moments of pride, or this is what I did when. And there will be similar things like this at work. The stories that you bring up in your annual review, perhaps, are indications of what's important to you, how you act in certain situations. And I think all of these give you a really rich, I guess, tapestry of opportunities to delve in, find out, or indeed challenge your values and go, yes, no, this really is a value. Maybe there's something that's a little bit stronger. I was going to say, Elisa and Harri, Elisa first, any thoughts on this? Have you got any other techniques yourself of how you uncover values?
Yes, at job. Yes. If you are we allowed to already talk about how we do this in the companies, or because I think you had a very good wording how this should be done, individually. But on the other hand, we are here to run the business, all of us. So I think it is really important when you do define the values at workplaces that you take as many people with you to define the values, and then that they have the say after. Like I have had the privilege to work in very old companies without values, and then we had a work. How do we find the values inside the company, because they are, of course, after 160 years there. For example, at VR, they have been there. And when I joined this company 1 year ago, I knew that they are there, but hey, come on, let's find them, what they are. Not invent them in the corner room, but take our people with us. And we took almost half of the people from 6,000 participated to this work. We had workshops and we had the questionnaire. And after 4 months, we found the values and find the way how to also word them. And how do you ensure that they are not in discrepancy? What is the reality? This is the only way to do it, that you involve your teams and employees to participate to this work.
That's lovely. And Elisa, we're going to come on.
You see the values there in the corner, or that side. Sorry.
Elisa, we're going to come back to this because you said a number of really fascinating things. So we're going to dig deeper into that.
Yeah.
Harri, thoughts from you about discovering values?
It's all about practicing what you're preaching, meaning that it is kind of by the actions, by the behavior, you can represent your values, even though you don't exactly know how you do it, how you implement them. But the one good thing that I've personally realized, and this is nevertheless, are we working a professional life or private life, when you kind of realize that there is no need to regret anything. So it is a kind of proving that you are doing things right with the knowledge that you are having at the time. So you don't need to regret. So you are still acting upon your values and a good behavior. And mostly it is practicing what you're preaching, because it is inevitable that there is no kind of a trustworthiness for the leaders in case they are not behaving according to the values of themselves or of the company. And having said that, I've seen quite many values in the companies. I'm not saying that anyone is wrong or right. It is just that there has to be individual's identity, which are somehow interlinked with the values as well, in order to kind of perform in a good manner according those values and as a team as well.
Well, Harri, thank you. What you've done is you brought us beautifully onto the next section.
Exactly.
Is that okay?
This was an excellent introduction from both of you for actually stepping into the workshop. So and opening your own values and how they connect with the company values, and how it is important to also find that connection in processes where you involve everyone to discover those values, and in processes where you yourself make the decision of continuing with the company because it's so connected with your own values. So Alastair, I hand it over to you.
Okay.
I will just be here in the background.
Lovely. Well, pop up the first slide to do with my values. And I think it's really good, as Harri just said, let's, personal identity, and let's speak of us as leaders, and we are leaders on this call, how we lead through our values, and then how we link them into the work. So here's a quick overview of mine, and then I'm going to hand over to Elisa and then Harri to just talk through our own personal values, and then we'll weave those back into our work values, and off we go. So my values, there they are. I have certainly a value around vitality and energy, and I have a value around creativity, very important to me, and I have a value around presence, being present for other people. Now, I position my values in a certain way. This is how I choose to see them. They are an offer to others. So they are all outward facing, whilst being a real source of strength and inner strength to me, but they are predominantly outward facing. That means that I offer them first rather than wait to be asked. This is sometimes a balancing act. For instance, with vitality and energy, I've got to be very clear that my energy and vitality does not overwhelm somebody else with whom I'm coaching or working with, or working alongside, or someone within my family. And as I give my values, I find that I get back, I receive. It's a very mutual thing. So if I give energy, I get energy back. If I give ideas around creativity, the creativity in the person fulfills me as well. So it's a lovely loop of mutuality. So just a few quick words about vitality and energy. I have some very clear behaviours around this, because that's a value and you need very specific behaviours. And for me, a lot of my behaviours are about how I look after that vitality and energy in order for it to be at its best. And I'm incredibly clear how to recover and conserve it, how to boost it. I also know what drains it, so that I can offer this in its best pristine form to whomsoever needs it. So I think that's really important there. And I'll just touch on creativity, because I'm going to touch on presence later. I've got this thought around creativity, which is that it's got a narrow definition in life. People think of, oh, when you're saying creative, you're talking about the arts, the high arts. And I don't believe that at all. And I do have this fundamental belief that we are all creative, and we're probably more creative than we give ourselves credit for. Possibly a lot of the time that creativity is knocked out of us at school, maybe even in the early years of our work. But there's a brilliant quote from Picasso that I just have on the wall, which goes, "Every child is born an artist. The problem is staying an artist when you grow up." And I just think that's so true. So my purpose is to unlock creativity in others through the work I do, and through outside work as well. And that's how I approach everything, really. And so my key behavior around creativity is consistently trying new things. So I have to live, and I choose to live, a very creative life. I was a musician way back in the day, but now I paint and draw and do carpentry and ceramics, and I cook, and I now garden. Gardening is my huge passion. I see it as the most creative pursuit I've ever been engaged in. So I live creativity. And that's what I think makes it such a sort of, if you like, truthful value for others to see and witness. So there's a snapshot of me and my personal values. Elisa, would you like to take us through yours?
Thank you. And I was just thinking, because we seem to be quite similar persons, by the way, because I know how the wording when I'm next time having something with the cooking or gardening, what I also like, that the spoiled cooks what I have done or dishes, if they are spoiled, now it's part of my creativity, and sometimes it's very, very well working, or sometimes it's not. I have maybe I will go a little bit differently to this topic, because when I now reflected for a second for these values, I notice it that these are pretty much the values what I have had in several companies, and I have took them with me. So the first one is transparent and open, and this is really vital for me, and it's part of my nature. Even in being in listed companies, you can be very transparent and open without violating the legislation of stock legislation. So in that sense, this is my second name: be as transparent and open as possible in everything what you do, and also walk that talk with our employee webinars, and being easy to approach, and invite people to approach you and have discussions by the coffee machine. This is how we build culture, by every encounter what we have whenever we meet our people. And curiosity is also something. It's not only about being curious, but it's also somehow striving for excellency or striving for improvement. And it might be that I have had something to do when we have this one value at VR, that we drive for improvement. It is really visible in this company, and it's also related to curiosity. When you are curious, you are driving for improvement very much, and therefore that is, I think that's the way how people, why the humanity has started in this 10,000, 20,000 years. It's about curiosity, and I think we should embrace it even more, and reward people when they are curious and asking so-called good questions, which we in Finnish we say that they are stupid questions, but I think they are really good questions. They say that trustworthiness is also something what I actually noted, that I took it from one company, but maybe this is also the reason why I have been choosing these companies, or why these companies have been choosing me to lead the business. So therefore, I see that values are like compass, and they keep us on tracks, because I'm in railway business. So now they are not compass, but they are keeping us on tracks, and they are showing the way how to behave. And the next actually thing is that you have to always have the behaviors together with your teams, approved and discussed through in workshops. So what does this mean for us, these company values, and if there are any kind of contradiction or conflict to your own values, then, as I have done before, I have left the company at early phase long time ago, when it was not aligned with my values.
Elisa, that's so, I've written down so many things. We're going to have a long conversation. But let me just move to Harri. And Harri, just talk us through your personal values, and then we'll get into a good chat about our business values.
Yeah, my personal values are kind of more or less reflecting my identity. Who am I? And as having a dare and care, they are kind of bundled together, but it is kind of defining that I have this interest and curiosity to seek something new, seek the development and challenge the status quo, because there has to be another way to do things a bit better. And if you're not challenger in that sense, you don't make any progress. And I mean, in life, in business life, in a private life, I think that is something that is in my DNA, so to say. And it's not only because I dare to possibly do things, but because I care. I have that passion that whatever I'm doing, I mean, in the business, in private life, it is about the daring and caring at the same time. And what comes to the integrity, it is kind of very simple saying it's about to do the right thing. And I'm a bit reflecting what I said earlier about the regretting things. And when you're having a strong value within that, I mean, you don't need to regret, because you always act upon that value and do the best decision, best moves with the knowledge, with the according to circumstances that are around you. And honesty is something that maybe it's easy to relate for most of us, because once again, in order you to be a challenger, question the status quo, do the right thing, you need to be, first of all, honest to yourself, and then honest to the others. And through that honesty, you can actually gain the respect within the organization as well. You don't do any window dressing or be something else that you are. You are what you are, and do according your capabilities together with the people. So honesty is not just it's not lie, truth or lie. It is much about that who you actually, how you represent yourself to the others as well, being who you are.
Brilliant. Harri, thank you.
Thank you.
So we're now getting into the stage when we're going to talk now through a different lens, which is, you've seen our personal values, but these are the values of our organizations. And this is where the conversation begins. So what I'd like to start with, though, is something Elisa just mentioned about how, and it might be something really important for us to have in our minds as we go through this, how we live these values. And I'd like to put forward the way in which we suggest it's done, which is, it's very important to have clear values. But these are big, as we said earlier, universal truths, big statements. They're not behaviors. Behaviors sit underneath the values, very specific behaviors. What do we do when we say this? So I'll talk you through some of them in my example. But then you need to go another level underneath specific behaviors. So big values, tight behaviors, and then it's action. We call it signals. So action is action, but a signal given by a leader, which is an action of a lived behavior, gives a signal to the rest of the organization to go, this is how I believe we should be living our values, how we should be behaving in a day-to-day, every interaction. I think it was Elisa said, every encounter. So let me just quickly talk through that and see if that model works for you and if you can hear it from us as we go through this. So at Creamer and Milliken, we have 3 thoughts. And remember, we're about accelerating culture change. So for us, it starts with this idea of and, which is collaboration, building, parity, partnership with the people, co-creation. We don't have all the answers. Again, I think it was Elisa said brilliantly, we had to find the values. We had the values. They were just a little lost in the 150 odd years that we've been going, and we needed to unearth them and bring them out into the light. So a lot of what we do is not complete invention. It's working with people to draw that out. Secondly, that it's all about people. A culture is all about people. It's not about strategy. It's not about data. It's about people. And so we just do a kind of 1, 2, 3. That's where it is. A lot of our work starts at the top and at the bottom. So you create that lovely tension where the leaders want change, but the people, if you like, at the bottom also want the change, and keep each other accountable. And then thirdly, well, guess what? Presence. So there it is. It's one of mine and it's one of the businesses. But if we cannot be 100% present for each other, for clients, for coaching, one-to-one work, then we shouldn't be in business. And presence, I think, is the great gift, and it's the great Achilles heel of our times. It's so hard to be there without checking the phone, without seeing all the things coming up on screen, etc. To be fully present for someone is a great gift. My father, as I said earlier, was a doctor, and he used to say in all his years, when you really listen to somebody as a patient, and they feel heard, that's the moment that they begin to heal themselves. And I think this is absolutely true of business as well. When people feel heard, that's when, and listened to, that's when change happens. So you can see how these things are absolutely integrated into how we do our work. And hopefully I've given you a little glimpse into how they link back to who I am. So, Elisa, would you like to talk us through your company's values?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is really what we found last by Christmas. So we actually worded it so that we will find them for Christmas present, and then have the wording behind them after this 3,000 our employees participating into finding these values after 160 years in the company. Company with a so long history deserves values. Mm-hmm. And I already described how we found them, and now I think that this is also the base for the company culture, what we want to create at VR. And the same journey I have had the privilege to work for Paulig and for Tikkurila, where we did the same thing, that we defined the values and then we started to change the company culture together with a long journey. It's as we know, company culture, you can't really shape it, or you can't decide that it is something now like this based on these values. As always, it has to be. So it's a long journey to change the culture or shape the culture is the right wording. Now we are living these values, we are wording them, and actually we are now going back to our people and our employees and trying to find first stage. How many of them has actually know that we have the new values, and they are in teams, they have been talked through and defined what are the behaviors, what we want to embrace behind these values. So this is a long journey, but it's really fun when you start then driving that, shaping that culture based on these values, and how do you really then make it alive in your daily work. For example, we are in people business also in with our customers. So the more happier and more our values are visible also to our customers in trains, the happier will be our customer, but also our employee will be happier, because then he sees, or he or she sees immediately his work and the thanks and the feedback from the customers when he or she is working based on these values. So I think you can shape the culture, but you have to have very clear vision how you do it, where you are going, and what is the target state of culture you want to create. And then talk about that, walk that through, and ensure that all your managers, line managers, are with you. And that then you are able to shape the culture to the right direction. And then maybe in the next section, I will talk about how do you do it with the soft things and then with the hard things, as I divide how do you shape the culture with soft and with hard things. Over to Harri.
Yeah, Harri, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, nice to hear your thoughts about this topic, and Fondia, since the beginning of the times when Fondia was founded 2004, it was inevitable that Fondia will be and is still a value-based organization where the value are part of the DNA. And the values are not just the management values, these are the Fondians, people's value. And these are the values that has been there quite a long time. 2-3 years ago, we kind of thought that should we kind of refresh the values? That was maybe the management view. And then we let the people to kind of maybe update the values in case there's a need to that. But anyway, the outcome was that, no, I mean, that the values are still the same. We may kind of interpret them slightly different in our actions because the world is changing around us. So basically what I'm saying here, that this is not the kind of a management jargon. This is how the people see who we are. So it is a bit of reflecting our Fondians' identity as well. And we are living with this value in every day. So even we are actually having a value watchers. It's a kind of a side role for the certain people in all corners of Fondia as we are operating in Baltics, Sweden and Finland. So this is a thing that we are kind of living day by day. Of course, as Elisa said, there has to be also a bit of a vision, operational, where we're heading and to where we put our all actions and efforts. But always there's this kind of a value in beneath. In addition to values, there's a certain policies that I need to mention because those were one of the things that why I was so attracted to Fondia for 5 years ago. And there is a so-called no asphalt policy. It might sound as a bit unorthodox policy, but I think it says it all in a sense that, you know, we like to be a kind of a straightforward, pragmatic, honest people doing a good business with our customers. So get rid of all the nonsense and believe in that as well. So that was something that appealed to me very strongly, because if there's a company who is publicly stating that kind of a policy and living with the values, it makes a difference. So dare to create, law made smart, give and receive, my place to work, pride and passion. Maybe easy to relate, but there's also meaning in our real life as well, how we live and operate with the customer.
Lovely. Harri, thank you. And so here's the conversation now. And actually, Elisa, I want to start with you because you said at the beginning, oh, maybe these things should have a little bit of tension in them. And you and I may have a slight difference of opinion, because you said, let me tell you about how we do it. And there's a hard and soft skills associated with it. I'm of the belief, but I'm going to hand over straight to you, that there are no such difference in this day and age between hard skills and soft skills, hard ways of doing this or soft ways of doing this. I think all the ways are hard. To be a great communicator, emotional intelligence, to really engage people at all levels, I think these are great hard skills. Yeah, I think they are hard skills. I don't think they are. The communication often was thought of as a a soft skill. What's your response to that?
And there is a now big misunderstanding because most likely because of my bad Finglish as we speak compared to your great British English. So I meant hard things and soft things. How do you shape the culture? Things, so matters and ways of doing, and fully agree that hard and soft skills, I think they are all hard. You are totally right. So that was my point, that when you shape the culture, you have hard stuff, and then you have the values and the behaviors, and how do you lead people? How do you communicate? And behind all these words are those also actually the hard things, what I mean. How can you shape the culture? And it's the roles and responsibilities. It's the vision or the strategy of the company and strategy. So where you are going, how you are going to get there, and also structures. What is your operational model? What are your processes? Are they supporting the culture? And as well systems. So technologies. How do you that the HR systems are easy and support your line managers' work. So hard things, systems, goal, target setting. How do you do the target setting, which is hard thing, as we speak when we talk about business. So, and then the values as a guiding light or keeping us on track. How do you do these things? So this is how you can shape the culture to the right direction. And this is what I meant.
Yeah. Sorry, I totally understand now. And I would just back you up by going, as they are in life, these values show themselves, as you said, in every encounter, every moment. So let's just spend 1 minute on this, So they have to be role modeled. So if the leaders and the leadership and the senior management are not living these, and I think both of you spoke about alignment of the senior team. If you haven't got that alignment, you're in deep trouble straight away, because if some of your leaders do not think that these values are important, they won't lead them. Other people underneath them go, okay, so it's optional. I can lead them, I can't lead. Then you're in deep quicksand, as we call it. So they show themselves in all the big things, as you've said, the processes, the structures, the appointments, formal and informal ways, big events. But they also show themselves in tiny gestures, halting moments, but one-to-one meetings. And I think also values can be felt through the tiny, unconscious, less visible actions. Maybe you see a conversation going on in another office, or you hear a call. I was speaking recently to a French-American big business, and they talk about their culture, a lot of it being around le non-dit, the unsaid, which for some of us is very unhelpful to go, well, it's all just out there in the ether and you will be able to pick it up. I think most of us would go, okay, but actually we want to be incredibly explicit about how my leadership show up, how we walk into a room, our attitude, our approach to a big meeting, a crisis meeting. All of that comes down to actually our values. For instance, here we are, I'm looking at them. We care. We're going into a crisis meeting, but I care about the people, the outcome, the stakeholders, whatever. We're going to do this together. We're going to find a way through this to drive improvement. So everything is shaped by these. So Harri, can I bring you in and ask you to just talk a little bit about how you live some of these, so one or two examples perhaps in Fondia.
Maybe give and receive. It's about bit of the same thing, that doing things together, but it's also sharing workload, teaching, learning, and as today we, after Corona, we're talking about the big theme of this era is a back to office theme. Yeah. So it is not question about that. Are you not able to do your work wherever you are, but the silent learning to being together and being 1 + 1 is always more than 2, but 1 + 1 via Teams is most likely less than 1 in the end of the day. You got my point. So it is we think that sharing is a caring as well. So when you give something, you get something. So it's everybody wins in that sense. It's about the collaboration, because this is the theme at the moment in the business life, where we are having a bit of a challenges. Technology is there helping you to work remotely, but is the productivity, efficiency, is the learning, are you keep maintain the challenger role if you are just only working remotely? Most likely not. But anyway, that's one sample. And of course, dare to create. This is part of our identity as well, because you may be a challenger, you may be a follower, but I think Fondia is the challenger. We are one of the listed legal companies in the world. There, as far as I know, there's 2 others, one in Australia, one in UK. But the whole concept, how we operate is totally different. It is challenging the whole legal industry in a sense, as we are also believing a lot in technology, the ways of working, and the kind of a legal department as a service concept as well, where basically we are acting with the customers as we're acting lawyers when they are working in-house in their organization. So we are kind of challenging the status quo, so to say. So it's just to mention few of things.
Thank you, Harri. And I'd just like to add a couple of things here. The way that because we're now getting down to, as you call it, the real basics, the groundwork. How do you do it? I think one of the things that's really critical to understand about culture and values, of course, frame it, is that culture is on one hand a collective experience. It's 50 people, it's 5,000 people, but it's intensely personal. You're asking someone to bring their values, bring themselves to work, and link those, build a bridge across to the work values, and to absolutely feel comfortable that they are able to express themselves through work. So it's very personal. And that means that people need to see the benefit, the value to themselves of living this culture, of living this particular value. And we would always start a piece of work with saying, okay, so caring is one of the values of our business. What's the benefit to you to be more caring in your life, in your wider life? And the minute that you ask that question, it's quite interesting, because people make obviously the connections back into their homes and their families, and maybe the work they do in their community, or they're part of a choir, or they go, oh, I think I could do that a little bit more. So if my business is wanting me to be more caring, actually, maybe in life I can be more caring. I can see how I can do that. It'll benefit me. It'll benefit the business. The second thought is that actually a lot of what we're asking people to do, again, dare to create, for instance, is to form for this to become a habit of daring, of being more creative, of being more caring, of being more giving. So it comes down to often, when you think about New Year's resolutions and how often they fizzle out so quickly in January and February, these ideas that we think are important to us actually require the structure of habits. You need to get into the habit of doing this regularly. They say it takes about 60 days to really embrace something new, such as a new behavior, and then really it moves from the conscious to the unconscious. You just do it every day. You don't even think about it. There's a lovely tool called, which I've been very interested in, called the Mood Elevator. Do look it up. It's by a business in the States called Sen Delaney, SENN. And it's just got a lovely sort of list of positive approaches and attitudes to a neutral down into negative. And you sort of go, when you're walking into a meeting, give yourself 5 seconds to go, how do I want to be in this meeting? Because you're coming from the previous meeting, and that could have been a crisis, it could have been whatever. Clear yourself. How do I want to be for the people in this room? Walk in at that level. Because when you're coming in a fog of depression and angst, it's very difficult to move people up the elevator system. So that's become a habit for me about how I turn up. And that, of course, links into my value around presence and putting people first. Because if I arrive in a meeting and I'm all terribly stressed, that's going to bounce back on the other people. So, Elisa, I want to come back to you as we're getting now into these things, because you said a lovely thing earlier, which is it's fun. This work can be fun. We make it sound as if it's hard. It is hard. But I just want to explore that a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, and it's a very, very good point. Before going to that fun part, I would just like to add something which we have not yet talked about that, because in this paper now, what we have in front of us about our company, VR, we don't have our purpose here.
Right.
And our purpose has to be very much linked, as always. Company purpose has to be linked to the values, so that you have an enduring or a lasting purpose in your company. And therefore, getting there together for a better sustainable world is our purpose, why we exist. And therefore, we care about environment, we care about safety of our own people, but of course, naturally, our passengers and so forth, company security, and especially in these days, what is happening out there on the Baltic Sea, for example. We have to be very, very caring in many ways, and that has to be very much linked to the company purpose. And this, I just wanted to reflect that don't separate them.
No.
And when you talk about your values, I think how I love to word it, it has to be quite simple for a company where you have 9,000 people working 80% in shifts. Yes. So we have to have very clear why we exist, what we do, and how we do it. And therefore, our strategy page is actually one pager. There are not very many words. There are how we do it is our value, what we do is our strategy, and there are practically 3 words as well. And then why we exist is our purpose. And when you can word it in one page, and which is easy to understand, and which is actually, in our case, it's a drawing. So you can easily find in that drawing every role in our company, how they contribute to our purpose, why we exist. This is now complicated to explain when we talk about without paper, but I just wanted to reflect this because one of my key word is also one of my how I want to behave is to simplify things. Railways are very complicated infrastructure, and the way we operate is quite complicated way of of operating, because this is complex railway world. And therefore, when we can simplify it, it will be also helpful for our people and our employees to understand how they contribute to the strategy. It sounds, of course, big words, but this is why I also find that when we explain where we are going, what we are going to do, and how we are going to do it, it is fun when it's as simple as possible.
Yeah.
And you can find you have that opportunity to talk to your employees in many cases, and then they come back to you and ask questions that what does this mean for me, or what does this mean for you? And then we shape the kind of culture, as you said, that when you put people into one room, they start shape the culture by their own, actually.
Yeah.
So it's really fun. It's hard work, and you should not give up. It requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of attention. It requires a lot of persistence, and you have to be patient, which is not my nickname, unfortunately. but here you have to be patient, and patience will pay you then off, but you have to be also very persistent. And when you were referring, Alastair, that which is now or maybe a hard thing to talk about, when you say that you might find out that you have persons in your team or near you or close to you that who are not behaving based on the values or are conflicting with them. You have to have a collective habit also. How do you interfere to the behaviors which are not based on your values? So you have to dare to you have to have the courage to not approve that kind of behaviors, and you have to have the consequence management in place. How do you tackle these unfortunate cases? And that is not always fun.
No.
But that's how you have to have rules, unwritten or written rules, and then behave based on those rules. But there are no exceptions at all.
Elisa, I just wanted to add to that. You're absolutely right, because there's a thought I've just written down here. Strong leaders who live into their values are never silent about the hard things. And you've just beautifully illustrated that. I love this idea that you have a drawing, that there is something. I mean, you talk about clarity. People need clarity. We've got 80% of the workforce are shift workers coming in at different times. And it's not just that there's a drawing that says, this is what you're part of. The word you used was, this is what I contribute to. So this is how I make this drawing fresh, alive, every shift, every day. This is where I can go. This is where I can be myself. This is where I can contribute. Lovely.
And exactly. And when my big theory is, maybe it's not my theory, maybe I have borrowed it during these years from somebody, but I have very strong belief that when you are able to create so strong culture that nobody can actually copy it from you, because they can copy everything else. They can take your people and hire them to the competitor. They can also copy your products, your services. Everything else is able to be copied, but culture is something which always stays, and you can really build a competitive advantage for your business about that culture, what you want to embrace and grow your business. And culture is so vital for your success that it is worth of really also invest in that. I mean, time, money, and especially time.
Yeah. Harri, I'd love to end with you before I hand back to Alex and any questions and thoughts, because just building on what Elisa has said, you are a law firm that is changing how business is done. So you're out there trying to successfully go, there is another way, despite all the other law firms out there. So these values are critical to how you do that. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. As Elisa said, that is vital to understand the purpose. It is all about rewriting the legal industry, and it's actually never-ending story. I mean, it is always to be curious and daring to challenge the existing and using smart ways how to find putting the real accent. So those are part of our DNA as well. But as self, I mean, we also like that while we are spending a lot of time in working, it is okay to have a fun at the same time. This is not that serious. This is not matter of life or death. But anyway, and to kind of show a bit of a humanity to each other's, meaning having a pride who we are, and it is okay to ask help, and it is okay to have an argument and overcome that. So it's okay to be who you are. We don't need to be exactly the same. Yeah. So we are according to values. We try to open the opportunities for people to grow as well, because these are not kind of isolated themes, purpose, values, identity, operational models. These are kind of interlinked all together, and more they are kind of revolving around each other's, they are kind of complementing. So more you get the positive spiral, more you get the better results and so forth. And happy people makes a happy customer, and that's part of what we believe. I mean, I haven't seen many times that the employee satisfaction would be bad and the customer satisfaction would be good. There is a linkage.
Exactly. Very good points. And you also brought back this idea of, yes, it matters how these two are interconnected, your brand and your company culture. And it's not like it's one thing, right? Thank you for an inspiring talk and for opening up all of your own values and the company values, the processes behind them, how you connect with these values and what kind of behaviors you lift up, and also behaviors that you discourage. I really loved both of your points of regarding conflict, and that conflict is not always bad. You don't need to act impeccably all the time or be in a straitjacket. And what you, Elisa, said about well, if somebody doesn't behave according to the values, then it's also important how you react there. And I also wanted to bring this idea of friction is also important, and friction can also be a gift, because important things will come up from those frictions. So instead of being afraid of them, then we can embrace them and also give space to listen to those signals, like you, Alastair, mentioned. And at least in our experience, you do get to a better place after that, and you do grow more through those experiences than you do when everything works smoothly.
Alex, I'd just add to that, and it might be I might be just playing with words and semantics, but friction, yes, and grit, but you could reframe it by talking about dynamics. And we do that a lot around culture. You know, I was talking earlier about how it's personal on one hand, but it's a collective experience on the other. Back to Elisa and Harri's point about having a purpose. One can have, you know, I can sign up to Elisa's purpose for there straight away, and that's me having a relationship with that higher purpose. The great thing about work is that I then walk into there and discover that there's 6,000 other people who share that higher purpose. And so we're together. First, it was just me, and now I'm part of a movement that believes that this is true. So this is this dynamic range. And I was speaking earlier about how some cultures are highly visual and visible, and some are less visible, some are even invisible. Again, how businesses choose to live their cultures is this dynamic line. And as Elisa was saying, you know, this is a long, hard yet rewarding piece of work to balance these dynamics all of the time. It's got to be leader-led, but it will be people-driven. You know, it's personal experience, but it's a collective experience, etc. I just have one other thought, which was actually for Harri, two thoughts. With your give and receive, Harri, I don't know whether you've come across a book called The Go Giver by Bob Berg. You should buy it for everyone in the law firm. It's very small. It's about 100 pages, bright red cover, Bob Berg, B-U-R-G. And it's all about how in business, not just in life, if you give first, it will come back in spades, but you've got to make the first move. So there's that. And I loved your thought about happy people. My old boss at Unilever, Keith Weed, the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, used to say, miserable people deliver miserable results. So our job is to be the exact opposite of that, because you just know which way it's going. If that's the case, you've got to be happy people.
Yeah. Strive to be at least every day. That's a very powerful sentence there. Thank you. Shall we also ask everyone now to contribute? And in the meantime, I will actually read some things that people posted here. So Mira Rakkonen writes her values, truly friendly, honesty, open and innovative, driving meaningfulness. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Anya Kahri says, what a lovely and powerful statement, Elisa, thank you. Kati Ihamaki, thank you so much. Open and inspiring discussion. Unfortunately, need to jump out, but understood that there will be a recording available. Yes, there will be the recording available, so you will all receive it. You can rewatch it, and also feel free to send us some thoughts even afterwards if you have questions. Claire Mitchell writes, I love your idea of culture as competitive advantage. So also, Elisa, the uniqueness of culture, that others can take your people, copy your products, but they cannot replicate your culture.
So Alex, just to call out Claire, who's a good friend and colleague of mine, is the lady calling in from Australia. So they'll be sitting there with a glass of wine, I hope, from Indu is where she works. So thrilled that you're there, Claire. Thank you for your
Good evening, Claire. Hi, she says. Okay.
And just to say, just to add to the recording piece, if it is at all possible, and Alex, you'll guide this, I have, you know, just some notes that I prepared for this session. And if people want a copy of the notes,
yes, we can make them available. Yeah,
how, you know, the early part of the conversation. Happy to share those.
Definitely. Thank you. Okay, somebody would like to ask something, comment on something. We still have a couple of minutes, I believe. Yeah. So we can wait a bit. And maybe in the meantime, Harri and Elisa, any kind of final thoughts from you or feedback, comments, anything you'd like to still share?
Yeah.
Well, okay, take you, Harri, you first.
Yeah, I totally agree about the competitive advantage. And I need to say that the people and culture in Fondia is part of our strategy. We have three strategical cornerstones, which people and culture is one. And what is the aim of strategy is to create a competitive advantage, ultimately. So being in the best in the marketplace and serve customers at its best. Shortly, but Elisa.
Yes, I want to just thank you for for very inspiring discussion. It also, gives a lot of food for thought for me from Alastair and Harri's examples. And then there is now a question that how you see often kind of gap between values and reality. I can answer to this on my side sometimes, but when you are a little bit for longer time or has been already working with your company culture and with your values for a little bit time, then you start to see less and less, because you tend to hire people who are really look like your values in the company look like, and then that will, step by step change the company culture as well. And I always have those in my mind when I hire people. And now actually I have to go to an interview to start hiring. And those are my guiding lights and keep us also when you hire people.
There's a question just before that about our values have only just been launched. We're looking for ways to embed them in the business. Any thoughts? Well, there's a very interesting model that we use called the Barrett Values Center model. It's a brilliant place to start understanding about what are my values, what are the current values that I'm experiencing in the business, and where should the values be in a more aspirational world. And you start with those 3 snapshots. It's a fantastic starting place for a conversation, because it draws out the gaps, the serious challenges, but also the synergies. And that's where you can start from. So it's just a thought. I'm happy to explain that more to the person elsewhere.
And maybe that's the next workshop then.
Yes, there should be all of those things, like drilling down even further. I love how we started more with the kind of bigger umbrella of things and purpose, and we discussed these kind of bigger issues, and now going to the more specific. So I feel like this is also a story in all of these events. Minna Isotalus asks, based on your experience, how long does it take to build or shape the existing culture to the desired one? Thank you so much for an insightful morning session. Maybe I can jump in on that just very shortly. I think it very much depends on where you are and how far away you are from your desired culture. It might take less or more time depending on that, and depending on how willing are the people to change their mindset, because we all as human beings can change our mindset and can change the way we behave and can find that alignment between our personal values and the company values if it rings true. But if people really oppose that and they can't really find themselves in it, then it's really going back to what Elisa said. It is about hiring those right people, and maybe also allowing people who don't feel comfortable or don't feel like they can add something to find something meaningful for them. And at the same time, I think going back to those frictions, it's important to take that as an opportunity and really, really listen to the people. I think that's almost like half the job done when people really feel heard and feel like they're understood, and then you can create something based on that understanding to take things further.
And Alex, I'd just add to that. I think there is an initial, you're absolutely right about context. There's an initial part to get to where you feel your culture is working as you would want it to be. But culture and it never sits still. And it always needs to evolve. We've lived through 4 or 5 tumultuous years in which all our cultures have changed dramatically. So it could be external circumstances, could be a merger and acquisition. So it's a journey. And I know that might sound depressing to some people. I'd like to have a tick box, done the culture, it sits there. That's not how it works. But I think there's various parts to it.
It's also time to wrap up. A couple of thoughts from Doug as well. I imagine it also depends on how hard you go after it. We all change quickly during COVID. Some companies like Uber, Microsoft change fast due to how urgent it was. I think you can make rapid change if you focus in a very concentrated way. Yes, and adding those right resources, right? In the process. So just to wrap up, thank you, first of all, to our guests today. Thank you, Elisa. Thank you, Harri. Thank you, Alastair, for facilitating, co-facilitating. With the final thought, also, we, like I mentioned at the beginning, we work together with Alastair on different challenges, culture challenges, and we're very happy to help with any questions, any challenges you might have, everyone online. And hope you enjoyed the session. And once again, thank you to all of you, and hope you have a lovely Friday and lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good weekend whenever it starts.
Yes.
Thank you. Elisa, lovely to meet you. Harri, great to meet you too.
Same.
Same here. Bye-bye.